JD Vance was on Meet the Press earlier today where he was actually asked tough questions. Can you believe it? The reporters actually asked tough questions. I don't know why Donald Trump is not being asked any questions. Like, they're just fine with JD Vance being the one. Like, if JD Vance, if Donald Trump is elected, JD Vance will have no power. I don't understand why they just take him when they should be wanting Trump. There's a lot of reporters mad Kamala isn't answering any questions. Well, Donald Trump is literally never doing these interviews. He's just making JD Vance do it. Anyways, he was asked about the election denialism. He was asked about the childless cat lady statement, which he doubled down on. And he was also asked about the RFK Jr. endorsement, all of which he really fumbled the ball on. Let's just get going on it. So when asked about why is Donald Trump casting doubts on the 2024 election, Vance said, I don't think that's what Trump is doing. Well, what should he said?
Think that Donald Trump said in North Carolina and yet again Friday night.
Our primary focus is not to get out the vote. It's to make sure they don't cheat, because we have all the votes you need. You can see it.
Why is Donald Trump casting doubt on the election before it's even happened?
I don't think that's what Donald Trump is doing.
Well, that's what he's doing. That's what he says here. We need to make sure they don't cheat.
I think that what he's saying is that we want to pursue a set of policies in the Republican Party that make it easier for every legal ballot to be cast and counted, but make it harder for illegally cast ballots to be counted. Now, we can disagree about how many of those there are, whether there are a few hundred, a few thousand, maybe more, but just in the last week, okay, so just in the last week, once in Arizona and once in Pennsylvania, there were major court wins that make our ballot process more secure and more effective. I think that's what Donald Trump is talking about, is we have to pursue, sometimes through litigation, sometimes through better policy at the state or national level, a set of rules that make sure every ballot is legally counted.
Well, it's very different from your message, which is you said, and I'll quote you back to yourself, we have to work as hard as possible to persuade Americans to vote for us. Are you on the same page as Donald Trump? Because, again, he seems to be casting doubt on the results of the election before it's even happened.
Of course we're on the same page, Kristen. We talk all the time, and I guarantee you, if you sat here and said, Mr. President, Donald Trump, do you believe that we need to do, that your campaign needs to persuade voters as much as possible? Of course he's going to say yes. That's not inconsistent with thinking that we need to pursue a set of approaches that make sure legal ballots get counted, illegal ballots don't get counted.
The 2020 election was one of the most secure in our nation's history. That's a fact. That is what our government says. That is what independent investigators have said. So this is all BS. And JD Vance knows what Donald Trump is doing. I hate this thing of like, I think what Donald Trump was saying was, no, we know what he's saying. He literally tried to stop the free and fair process of the 2020 election. This is not up for dispute. And because of that, January 6th happened. He could have just said, I lost, but he was unable to do that because he's a loser and he's a small man and he can't admit that he actually lost. And that's one of the reasons why he's going to lose in 2024. JD Vance was also asked about the tariffs that consumers will be facing if Donald Trump is elected. Tariffs are actually a tax on consumers. It doesn't hurt the companies, doesn't hurt the countries, it hurts consumers. Let's watch what he had to say.
So when Kamala Harris says, if we do the thing that Trump already did, it's going to be way worse than it was last time, I just don't think that makes a lot of sense.
Well, let's talk about Trump's record during his first term. He did impose rounds of tariffs, and it cost Americans nearly $80 billion.
$80 billion. $80 billion.
In new taxes, do you acknowledge that imposing more tariffs will ultimately cost consumers?
Well, what it really does is it penalizes importers from bringing goods outside the country into the country. And I think that's just a necessary thing. We know that China and a number of other countries are using effectively slave labor to undercut the wages of American workers. Donald Trump thinks that has to stop. And again, what Kamala Harris is saying, Kristen, is that if you do this, you're somehow going to cause skyrocketing inflation. In reality, Donald Trump already did it. He brought a lot of jobs back, and it didn't cause inflation.
But it caused consumers to pay more. They paid more in taxes, $80 billion worth. Do you acknowledge that consumers ultimately will pay more if there are more tariffs imposed?
So economists...
Do you just acknowledge that?
No, I don't, Kristen, because I think economists really disagree about...
Economists do not disagree on what he's about to say, just to be clear.
the effects of tariffs because there can be a dynamic effect, right? So what some economists will say is what you just said, that it will actually raise costs for consumers. But what other people say, and I think the record supports what this other view, is that it causes this dynamic effect where more jobs come into the country. Anything that you lose on the tariff from the perspective of the consumer, you gain in higher wages. So you're ultimately much better off. You have more.
No. First off, Donald Trump lost a lot of jobs when he was president. He did not gain, there was not a net gain of jobs. Now, sure, some of that was because of COVID, but also because of his mismanagement of COVID. And secondly, saying that, like, I think we're at like 4%, 5% unemployment. We do not need jobs. What we need is prices to go down. And if they're complaining about the fact that prices are too high, this is a guaranteed way to make prices higher. It is just a tax on consumers. It's ridiculous. And he was also asked about the childless cat lady statement where he said he was being, quote unquote, sarcastic. I'm going to show you that, and then I've got some reactions from folks.
You're calling it a sarcastic comment.
Sure.
And yet some women, and you got the feedback in real time, felt like it was a gut punch to them personally. Do you regret making that comment?
Look, I regret certainly that a lot of people took it the wrong way, and I certainly regret that the DNC and Kamala Harris lied about it.
But do you regret what you said, Senator?
Look, Kristen, I'm going to say things from time to time that people disagree with. I'm a real person. I'm going to make jokes. I'm going to say things sarcastically, and I think that what's important is that we focus on the policy. There are certainly going to be things that I say. If I'm elected vice president, people are going to say, well, I wish he had said that differently. I think it's most important to actually be the person I actually am and to say those sarcastic comments were made in the service of a real substantive point. This country has become too anti-family. It's too expensive to afford a house. It's too expensive to afford groceries. Donald Trump and I want to change that. And unless we get better leadership, we're not going to.
But again, just very quickly, given that people have told you directly, have spoken out, have said that they were offended, they were hurt by those comments, do you wish you never made those childless cat lady comments?
I think that it's much more important for me to just be a normal human being who sometimes says things that people disagree with. I have a lot of regrets, Kristen, but making a joke 3 years ago is not at the top 10 of the list.
All right.
Wow. So some reactions from folks on this. Maya Wiley, who ran for mayor in 2021 of New York, said normal human beings know how to say, I'm sorry, I hurt you. She's a childless cat lady with kids and some without kids. Oh, she is a cat lady with kids, sorry. And some didn't give birth to, but as young adults took in because they're single, pet-loving mothers can't pay rent. There are people who care and people who con. I choose the caring over the cons. Word. Ron Filipkowski says it wasn't sarcastic. He said different variations of the same statement a dozen times. He said it a dozen times. He was being deadly serious about every single time. He said what he said, but rather than apologize, retract, or own it, like Trump, he claims he was just joking. He wasn't and isn't fooling anyone. And the difference between him and Trump is that Trump has a little bit of charisma, so he can, he can kind of say that he didn't mean what he said when we know what he meant what he said. JD Vance does not have that superpower, and you can tell that he is just slimy and wishing that the question would just go away. But because he is on the MAGA side, MAGA, you cannot apologize. It's just not a thing you do. And it's one of the things that I don't think we really truly value how much they've changed politics, is that it used to be that people would apologize. If you said something wrong, you'd apologize. That just doesn't happen anymore. And imagine in your own personal life, if you had a friend that, like, when they hurt your feelings, they just said, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. It's just not how you, like, deal with someone when you've hurt you say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Of course I didn't mean that, and I wish I had never said it. So easy to say. They won't do it. If you want to accept that in your personal life with your friends, why would you want your leaders to be like that? Okay. And then here he is talking about the RFK Jr. endorsement that I'm sure they're kind of regretting now. Look at how much they have to own.
Let's move on. Robert F. Kennedy, the big news yesterday.
Very big news.
He suspended his campaign, announced he's endorsing Donald Trump. He is also known as someone who has blamed vaccines for autism, antidepressants for school shootings, and recently said, quote, he won't take sides on what happened on 9/11. Do you have any hesitation about accepting his endorsement?
No, Kristen, I don't, because we're going to disagree on issues, right? There are things that Robert Kennedy has said that I disagree with. I'm sure there are things that he's said, or that I've said, excuse me, that he's going to disagree with.
Accepting an endorsement is itself an acceptance of that person's beliefs. You cannot separate the two. You can't say, oh, I like that this guy is supporting us. Let's put him on the main stage with Trump, and then say, actually, we don't agree with him on these outlandish things. That you can't have it both ways. They're trying to, you can't. They 100% own everything that she just said.
But I think what his endorsement represents is that Donald J. Trump's Republican Party is a big tent party. I was raised by two grandparents who are sort of classic blue dog.
Sorry to keep interrupting, but is that really the Big Ten party you want? A party that is like 9/11 conspiracy theorists, vaccines cause autism, Jewish people are immune to COVID? I can go on. Like that is who RFK Jr. is. Leaving a dead bear that you found on the side of the road in Central Park, not telling it about it for 10 years until it comes out in the New Yorker? That's the big tent you want?
Democrats, they believed in having a border. They believed that, you shouldn't have censorship in the United States of America. They believed in common sense economic policies. They may have disagreed with Donald Trump about tax policy, but they believed in some fundamental American values. And I think what RFK's endorsement really shows is that the Kennedy Democrats are actually more at home in the Republican Party of Donald Trump. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris's party, higher prices, doing nothing to fight back against the Chinese, to say nothing of a wide open border. That is not JFK's Democratic Party. It's not RFK's Democratic Party. We're thrilled to have the Kennedy Democrats where they belong.
Well,
for their part, the Kennedy family, every single one of his brothers and sisters has denounced this endorsement, and they are endorsing Kamala Harris. So the Kennedy Democrats are 100% Kamala. What he just said is a lie.
And some in the Kennedy family have stepped forward to say that they sharply disagree with this endorsement. But let's just go back very quickly. He says he isn't taking sides on 9/11. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, of course I don't agree with that, Kristen. Now, to be clear, I don't know what RFK actually said there. Maybe there was additional context. Of course, you actually have to see what people say before you agree or disagree with it. I certainly have taken sides in 9/11. I'm the pro-America side. I don't think that we should have been attacked, and I certainly think hitting back against the terrorists was justified. I don't know what RFK said there, but what I do know is that RFK said a lot of very interesting and important things, that the Democratic Party has become too pro-censorship, that the Democratic Party, especially in the wake of COVID, became really anti-freedom and anti-child. I mean, you had Democrats saying that we should be masking toddlers in their schools, even though we knew it caused developmental disabilities. I agree with RFK that that was crazy.
Well,
We did not know that was the case when it was happening. And to be clear, Donald Trump was president when businesses were shutting down and schools decided to do everything remote. That was Donald Trump, not Kamala Harris, not Joe Biden, Donald Trump.
fair, there was a lot of information that scientists were grappling with as it came in, and masks were perceived to.
I mean, I should be her. I keep pushing back. I don't even have the facts and figures in front of me.
Kristen,
Stop the spread of the disease. Let's move on.
Totally fair.
Yeah.
But the one thing before we move on that I would say on that is there were important leaders. Donald Trump was among them. RFK was among them, who were saying some of this stuff is crazy.
Not true. All right. And then we're going to end with this. On a separate show, Jason Miller is just coping in real time with the fact that the stock market is going nuts. I wanted to show you this because they do not know how to handle the fact that things are going well for the country. When things are going well for the country, that means that it is a bad day for them. I mean, that's kind of sad that like their campaign hinges on America doing poorly, but that's what they've set up so far. So here it is.
Well, on that point, and you have every right to say that she was part of this administration whose record you criticize, and obviously some of it is unpopular. Don't they also get credit for things that are positive? For example, the record-breaking stock market, the Dow breaking 41,000 on Friday.
Well, that's simply because businesses think that President Trump is going to come back in, and so they're energized. A big part of that RFK and Jr. endorsement that we had on Friday, which is huge. When you look at the numbers state by state, some of the states could be upwards of 13,000 to 20,000 votes. Other states, the RFK Jr. endorsement could boost by as much as 40 or even 50,000 votes. When you think about how close the margins are in this campaign, that endorsement alone could put President Trump over the top.
Now, of course, you all have watched you watched yesterday's video, so you know that is just entirely not true. That RFK Jr. is a nothing burger that does nothing to impact the race. And if anything, he might have negatively impacted Trump because of all that stuff Kristen Welker went through that he has to now own. By the way, don't mean to be mean, but doesn't Jason Miller kind of look like a thumb with a goatee and glasses? So they want to play like this game where, well, it's because of Donald Trump that things are going well. But when things aren't going well, it's because of Kamala Harris. No. Kamala Harris is leading the polls, and businesses know that Kamala Harris could very well be the next president. That is baked into the stock market. The stock market is a reflection on policies the Biden administration implemented in the past 3 years, and that is the reason why we got out of COVID as well as we did. It's the reason why inflation has been better managed here than in any other first world country. And is the reason why the stock market is doing well is because of Biden's policies, not because of some it's like if I were to say, hey, this coffee is actually keeping away tigers. It is because I'm drinking this coffee. There are no tigers here in Washington, D.C. It's ludicrous. Like, yes, there are no tigers in Washington, D.C. It is not because of this coffee. Yes, the stock market is high. It is not because Donald Trump exists. Sorry. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked the video, then please like the video. And if you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Just hit the button. Hit the subscribe button. You're going to love that. And I am going to live. If you're watching this in the next 3 hours, I will be live at 4:30 to talk about my time at the DNC and just I kind of want to watch some speeches I haven't watched, and I want to just hang out and chat with you for a couple of minutes for like a half hour or so. So I hope you can tune into that, and I'll see you soon.
I know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?